on the Calf Kick Sports podcast, we never want to be disingenuous to our listeners. We really appreciate our listeners, and we always want to do a value added. When you listen to our show, you're going to learn something about what's going on technically, because we hear a lot of sportsisms on sports broadcasts, and those are things that sounds like this team won because they were better, or they dug deeper, or they had bigger heart. That essentially doesn't mean anything. But we always want to talk about what is actually going on in the minute details as to why this person won. What did this person do better? If someone's just saying this person won because they're better, they're not really thinking. They're not really explaining something. But I think when it comes to Marvin Vettori and Israel Adesanya, I can safely say I just think Israel Adesanya is better. I'm joined as always by Ash. My name is Tim Wheaton. Thanks for listening to the Calf Kick Sports podcast. Ash, what's going on? We got a big event coming up.
Mate, brilliant intro. I couldn't have said that better myself. I couldn't have agreed better myself. I've been going through so much footage of Izzy and Marvin Vettori. And I mean, if you just look at the actual experience, you compare both of them together, Izzy's just a surefire win. I mean, it's very clear. He's fought better competition. He's fought better generally, but it's a close one, man. It's going to be a close one, a closer one, in my opinion, than most people think. What about your thoughts?
And I will elaborate this more because I don't want people to think I'm just writing off Marvin, because we watched a lot of tape for this to make sure we knew what we were, make sure that everything I remember was accurate. So I watched a lot of tape. Marvin actually has the right tools to beat Israel, but his tools are not sharp enough. And we'll elaborate more on what that means as the show goes on. But I do like this event going forward. I think they fought a few years ago. Both of them were developing that time. And you can especially see the improvement in Marvin. Actually, he's gotten a lot better since that first fight. I just don't think he's quite there yet. But like I said, he does have the right tools, and we're going to elaborate that a little more going forward. Now, but I do want to cover one thing before we move forward. We haven't been back for a little while. The last show you were on Mom's Basement podcast, of which you picked the Rob Font fight correctly. Congratulations there. Most people didn't pick Rob Font against Cody Garbrandt. Well done, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think Font is such a fucking dark horse in the division, man. I love Font, honestly. Just going through his fight history, it made me actually really love Font as a fighter. Very patient and calculated. Even against Moraes, when he got his back, when he got taken down onto the floor and dominated, he managed to get back up and knock Moraes out, man. So really good composure. I think he's only looked bad in one fight ever against John Lineker, but it's John Lineker. Him versus Jan, man, should be good. A good one in the future, I think.
Yeah, and I was really impressed that you picked him. You and I talked about it, and I was still like, I think Cody Garbrandt has it. But no, you picked Rob Font. That was a really good one. Mom's Basement podcast has some really good interviews going on right now. Make sure to check them out. You and I are going to be back 3 times this week to cover off the UFC 263 event. I'll also be featured on the Art of MMA podcast. I think it's going up on Wednesday. Are you heading back to Mom's Basement podcast at all?
No, so we're actually going to have... No, we're going to have them on the breakdown. We're going to have them the breakdown. So the 263 podcast breakdown, we'll have Mom's Basement MMA podcast on the podcast, as well as Hayes, hopefully, as well. So 2 guests for the first ever UFC breakdown with guests. So that should be a good one.
No, that's really exciting. Keep it tuned to Calf Kick Sports. We got a lot of stuff going on the next couple of weeks here. We're setting up a lot of content, especially going forward in July. But today we have a really fun one that we got to talk about: Marvin Vettori versus Israel Adesanya 2. We're going to talk about their first fight a little bit, what we see developing in their last few fights leading into this fight. But I mean, you've seen the first fight. I assume you watched it live and rewatched it recently. What did you see going into that one, Ash?
I mean, what I was really, really impressed with was... So Izzy was just landing shots, quite consistently in the first 2 rounds. I believe he even rocked Marvin Vettori with a nice elbow, and Marvin Vettori was like, "Oh no, I got eye poked," and it's like, "No, you didn't. You got rocked." And that was a big telling point that on the feet, Izzy is definitely a much better and more seasoned striker. But here's the thing: in that 3rd round, Rafael Cordero was going fucking crazy on Marvin, going, "Look, you got to win this round." And we saw a lot more desperation out of Marvin. He got the body lock takedown, got the takedown and managed to actually get top control for the latter part of that third round, winning that round as well. Something he probably could have implemented earlier in the fight as well. So I do see a lot of ways Marvin could have won, but that was such a long time ago, Tim. I mean, we're talking about, 3-4 years ago. Izzy's been in multiple championship level fights. He fought the fucking 205-pound UFC world champion recently in Yan. I don't think it's the same level of competition they faced. I mean, you're talking about Marvin, who faced the number 10 ranked guy in the world last, and he jumped to number 3, which is a bit crazy. But yeah, I mean, I just don't see Marvin winning. I do see the key in which he can win, but just he's not gonna. I don't think he's gonna take it, in my opinion.
And you know what's funny about that third round takedown was so good because he kept going for the the clinch to the trip takedowns all fight and couldn't get it.
Yeah.
And then finally that takedown, or he would go for a double and he would just kind of bend at the waist and it wasn't set up and he would just bend down and try to pick up his opponent, but he couldn't get Israel down. But finally, that was the one takedown where he chained to the second level. And that's a really good, impressive thing. So Israel did stuff the first part of that takedown in the third round. And then Vettori had a second part to that. The weird thing is he didn't do that any other part of the fight. And since that Israel fight, he's never done a chain takedown like that, which is really, I guess it's necessity that he hasn't needed to. Like Kevin Holland, he just got down on the trip takedown, or the double was just working fine. So I guess he didn't have to go to the second layer. But if you want to know more about chain takedowns, Khabib Nurmagomedov is the guy, because most guys can really do fine on the defending the first attempt layer on a takedown. But once you get to the second or third layer, guys will just give up. And so this is what we're talking about, of like, Marvin has the tools. Is he good enough to use the tools against Israel? Because he has a lot of the right things. In their first fight, he was extremely reactive to every feint. Like, he completely covered up. He had both hands up covering his head, and he would raise his leg. Over time, you can see in the Hermanson fight and the Holland fight, he reacts a lot less to feints. So he has gotten a lot better for a lot of things. And I think his game, he started to focus on just a few things that he does well. So in the first Israel fight, he was doing a lot of things. And now, as he's fought more and more, he's fought mainly Orthodox opponents, himself being a Southpaw. He has just narrowed down his game to the things that might work well against Israel. Because in the first fight, he actually had some success with the parry to the cross counter. And then in a lot of his fights, that's pretty much the only fight, or the only punch that he throws. Against Hermanson, he dropped him a couple of times with that exact combination, the parry to cross, or the control lead hand to the cross counter. And that's just what he throws over and over and over again. He just does the same thing over and over again. And that combination should work well. So against a Southpaw, in an Orthodox for Southpaw matchup, what you want to do is have your foot on the outside, you control the lead hand, and you aim for the big body kick, or you aim for the cross counter. And that is essentially what Marvin Vettori does. The problem with Israel is that he has more layers to his defense. So the first layer, you're just trying to get an entry on him. And then if you get an entry on him, he still has multiple layers to his defense, where it's either he's doing parries, or he's throwing counter strikes, or he just circles out. So there's multiple layers to Israel. And in a good example of this, someone like Paulo Costa never could get through the first layer. None of his entries ever worked. He entered on straight lines and it never worked. Someone like Robert Whittaker could actually get through the first layer, but then couldn't beat him in the exchange. So even if you're doing well on the first layer against Israel, he's got more layers to his defense. So just comes back to, like, overall, he's just a better fighter. He's a smarter fighter. Yeah. Now, going back to Marvin, he has improved a lot, and he has the right tools. His tools just aren't there yet. I actually don't like this fight for him. I know you should take a title fight, but I kind of wish Marvin would take a few more fights just to have more cage time, get a little bit better. I know.
Agree. Yeah.
Right. I know that he's fought 5 rounds twice in his last 2 fights, but I honestly just think he needs to get better at the things he already does well. But yeah, what do you see?
No, so I mean, in terms of that was a really good reference point in terms of, there's only certain champions that can get through the first layer of defense of Izzy. I mean, with Rob, that was quite evident in the way that he was looping a lot of his shots. He could barely get through the first defense, and he ended up getting knocked out. Now, Kelvin, he's probably the guy that's gone through the second, third layer of defense, and he managed to land some good shots, but Izzy just got better defensively as the rounds went on, started switching stances a lot more, throwing leg kicks, elbows. He was just getting out of the way a lot quicker as well, kind of getting the read on Gastelum a lot quicker. And agreed with what you just said. Like with Marvin, he doesn't, I mean, I don't think he's that sophisticated a striker that he has multiple levels of striking. But here's a little X factor. We've got Rafael Cordero in Marvin Vettori's, as his coach, head coach. And he's already had experience coaching against Izzy in 2 fights already. So it's going to be interesting, man. I don't know if his time is the charm for Cordero, but let's just going to see, man. Let's just see. I mean, I don't know, man. It's going to be an interesting one, regardless.
Yeah, Rafael Cordero is such a legendary striking coach. Like he would coach Mike Tyson earlier this year in his Roy Jones Jr. fight. Like Rafael Cordero is an amazing striking coach. If he can game plan, but this is the thing of like we have the right tools. You have the best striking coach to perhaps beat Israel. Do you have are your tools sharp enough to actually be used in this fight? Like if he can follow the game plan for the first round, that'd be really good. But Israel gets better as the fight goes on. Typically, he learns your striking patterns. So what we're essentially asking Marvin to do is fight extremely patiently, extremely well, extremely cleanly for all 5 rounds. And again, he's going to be looking for things that you need to control the lead hand and land the cross counter. Can he do that for 5 rounds without?
I don't think
hit?
so, man. I mean, multiple times, the same trick isn't going to work over and over again against Izzy, and that was proven by Kelvin, the Kelvin fight. I mean, Kelvin was really good at landing those shots initially, but then it was the same pattern. That this is why people make the comparison between Izzy and Anderson Silva, because Anderson Silva, classically, he doesn't rush in there and try and like fucking blow you away in the first minute. He's trying to read you the whole time. The first minute, first 2 minutes. That's why the Damian Maia fight sucked, man, because Damian Maia did nothing. And, Anderson was just trying to read him the whole time. And that is comparable to the modern day equivalent of Izzy versus Yoel. It's very similar. They're just trying to read him, trying to wait for your attack, and then I'll attack. I just don't see Marvin being able to be patient enough to counter strike and do his entries in that. I think he's just going to bull rush and do a Derek Brunson and just fucking take him down, or try and take him down as quick as possible.
So yeah, okay. So now we're going to come out of the striking a little bit because I mean Israel does struggle a little bit against Southpaws. He's had his worst fight against Southpaws, but I don't know that Vettori is the best Southpaw that he will ever face in his career. However, let's talk about the takedowns and a little bit more about the grappling, because if you are going to fight Israel Adesanya, you probably actually, I want to go back to the Anderson Silva Damian Maia fight. I think one day we should do a UFC 112 moratorium of like how this, like the first fight in. Yeah, it's a shit fight, and like the ramifications of it's the first fight in Abu Dhabi, and then the UFC never went back until like last year or something like that. Like it almost killed the sport overseas. Like it was, and they also, that fight was the one that ruined apparently Anderson Silva versus Georges St. Pierre. Like there was so much.
No way, did it?
Yeah, that's what apparently. One of the rumors to come out from that fight was like, no, you're not getting the Georges St. Pierre fight because it was boring. Like there was so much from that garbage fight.
You're just gonna look at each other the whole time, man. It's gonna be that boring.
But yeah, so on the takedowns, most of the entries for Vettori, he throws combinations to a shift, which is like the really good fighters to do this are Max Holloway and Dustin Poirier, the shift where you bring your rear foot forward to cover the distance. And Israel is someone who typically backs himself to the cage. Every single fight, he does back himself to the cage. So there is an opportunity to get a clinch and go for takedowns, as we saw Vettori did to Kevin Holland. He did it a few times to Hermanson as well. So he's doing a lot of the right things, but it's still a matter of, like, even in the first fight where I don't know, Israel has developed quite a bit on the ground, I imagine. And Israel was still able to wall walk and get up. So even if you get a takedown on him, he'll probably just get up. Vittori, in most of his fights, he hasn't passed guard all that much. So even once he gets you to the ground, he doesn't have a lot of tools to get to work on the ground, right? Even against someone like Kevin Holland, he didn't pass guard that many times. Hermanson, I think he passed guard once. Most of the time, he just hangs out in guards because he doesn't know quite what to do once you get the takedown. What do you think, though?
I mean, I think it's very rudimentary skills. That's the main point, Tim. So he either, ground and pounds you, or he's trying to go for a guillotine. I mean, it's not very, it's the same thing over and over again. It's the same pattern over and over again. And you're right, he doesn't pass guard or, try and get the mount or anything crazy like that. And I think with Izzy, maybe that's not enough. I mean, Jan managed to get him down on the ground, but he didn't impose like a heavy ground and pound. And he's 20 pounds heavier as well. And he's light heavyweight. And he's probably the better wrestler and better grappler than Vettori as well. So, yeah, I mean, that's probably the key to victory for Vettori, if there is one. Yeah, I just don't see it, man. I mean, it sounds like we're completely writing Marvin off, by the way. But, I mean, it's just what we're seeing right now. I mean, just the level difference. I mean, even Izzy's not even that pumped about this fight.
No. Well, yeah, we all I don't want to say his name because then we'll start talking about that fight, because I want to talk about this fight first and then we'll get to the Whitaker after. But this is what we were talking about. I actually wanted to pick Vettori going in because I thought it would be a hot pick. It'd be a hot thing that I can show, like, he has the tools. And then I'm watching him and on the tape, and yes, he does have the tools. His tools are just not sharp enough. He's also shrunk his game to just be effective at the cross counters. That's about the only thing he throws. He stopped throwing kicks. So I did the stats on this. In the 5 fights since fighting Israel Adesanya, he's thrown 396 strikes. Only 8 of them were leg kicks.
Really?
And
that's crazy.
And also on the cross side of that, or on the counter side of it, he gives up every leg kick. Like, he doesn't defend them at all. So if you're someone like, we know kind of what the game plan is against Israel is make sure that he can't use the size, kick out the leg, do a lot of cage cutting, mix in clinch and takedowns. But if you're not doing kicks, you're not slowing down the fighter who moves on his feet. He moves all the time. You need to be kicking.
Costa landed kicks on Izzy, man. So
even Costa. An example of this is Dominic Cruz, who like moves around. So you kick out his legs, which is what Henry Cejudo was doing. But he doesn't throw kicks. So again, we're kind of asking him, just get your overall game to be better and start doing things that you weren't doing before. This is becoming a taller and taller order. But yeah, we use Blachowicz as the kind of game plan of like, if you want to beat Israel, this is a good way to do it. But Vettori's doesn't do most of those tools. Doesn't have the same advantages, right?
Do you know how it started? Do you know how I think that started? Yeah, Jan's wrestling offense. So Izzy got so comfortable that it was like a striking battle. Even the commentators, Joe and Daniel, was like, "Oh my God, Jan, he's not even taking Izzy down," and they were saying it for like three whole rounds, yeah. And then all of a sudden, in the 4th round, striking battle, and boom, just went for a double leg takedown straight away. Izzy wasn't expecting it. That would be a good key to victory for Vettori if his striking was good. It was good enough. I mean, not that it's not bad. Not that it's not good, but it's not good enough, man. In my opinion, he's not big enough. He's not long enough to make it a kind of a competitive striking battle against Izzy. I think he's going to get chewed up before he even takes him down to the ground, in my opinion.
Yeah, and this is coming from a place of deep analysis. I watched many hours of tape, and I just come back to the same conclusion of like right tools, not good enough. He's just not going to be able to. But so Israel game plan, use distance control, a lot of kicks, control.
There is another thing as well that he's got a beautiful right left hand, which I think is a key to victory as well. I mean, he landed it a few times against Izzy, and what I've noticed about Izzy is that he takes more shots from straights for people moving forward than hooks, because he sees hooks and overhands from miles away, as evidenced by the Rob Whitaker fight. So that, if he's worked on his left hand, man, he might be able to land a few good left hands on Izzy. Never know.
And this is what I was talking about with the success that Vettori had in their first fight, was that exact combination. He parried the jab and then would follow up with his left hand cross. And that, like I said, that's all he's been throwing against Manson. He threw it a few times against Holland, but that's like the thing that he kept going back to. He sharpened that one combo.
Beautiful left hand. Again.
Beautiful left. He actually does have a beautiful left hand. He's sort of knockdowns with it. It's just a matter of, will he do it consistently? Is he able to do it enough? And we've seen Israel get hit. He's certainly not untouchable. It's just a matter of, is this opponent good enough to consistently do it over a 5-round fight? I'm going to say probably not, but if you did want to pick a dark horse in the division and be a really cool, edgy guy, Vettori probably isn't it still. I'm still going to say Vettori.
Yeah, I mean, he's annoying as well, man, as a personality. I'll be honest. Like, he pisses me off, man. Like, that whole Marvin angry Marvin thing is just, it's just annoying in all honesty. So I just don't think he's gonna win either. That's just my opinion.
So standing, both of them should have the same game plan because it's an open side, Southpaw versus Orthodox. You want to actually land a lot of low kicks to kick out your moving opponent, control the lead hand, and try to law the cross counter. Really, realistically, Marvin shouldn't be better there. It would be really impressive if he was, though. Marvin should want to mix in, kind of convert chain in strikes to clinch to take down really smoothly, and then have multiple layers to his takedown. But the thing is, like, we just haven't really seen that all that much. I don't think I had too many other notes. We talked about the shifts, we talked about the leg kicks. You got to control center, don't back yourself to the cage.
Here's a question. I mean, what do you think of Marvin as a champion? Just in case the unthinkable happens, he wins the championship. It makes the middleweight division very interesting at that point. But do you think he matches up? Okay, just take Izzy out of the equation. He blows Izzy out the water. That's the hypothesis here. So he blows Izzy out the water. Izzy's, has to take a year out because he got knocked out so badly. How does he fare against the rest of the middleweight division? What do you think of that?
So, this is a really good question. I really do like this question. Presumably, the next fight is Robert Whittaker.
Yeah.
How does a Vettori Whittaker
Christ, man? Oh my goodness. That's
what do you see? Yeah, it is. It really is. I think Whittaker has a much more diverse game. So Israel has a smaller game, but the smaller part is much better than everybody else's game. Whittaker has a bigger game overall, and I think Whittaker absolutely eats him alive. What do you think?
Oh man, there's even one thing that Marvin said so stupidly, because I don't think Marvin's the most intelligent guy, but he said, "Oh, I hate this, that." There was this interview, and then Marvin was like, "Oh, yeah, it was that kick that he does to the knee that I hate," and he goes, "Oh shit, I shouldn't have said I hated it. Now he's gonna do it all the time." Now he's gonna do it all the time. So I think he knows that he's such a bad matchup for him. He can out wrestle him. He can out wrestle Vettori for sure. Whittaker's got amazing wrestling and ground control, and he can outstrike him anywhere. Like, he's better, in my opinion. Just well-rounded, he's a lot better. So yeah,
totally agree. And I do love the kick from Whittaker as well, because you see a lot of other fighters using the oblique kick. Yeah. And like John Jones was really good with the oblique kick. And he kind of threw it almost like it was a lead oblique kick, but it was almost like a teep landing. Whereas Whittaker puts his entire body behind oblique kicks. Like that was the thing that actually
your knee up, man, your kneecap up completely.
And I think he destroyed one of the muscles in Romero's knees doing it, because he like dashes in. So against someone like Vettori, who I just said does not defend kicks in any way, I think he's either knocked out or has a broken knee or both in that fight. But I think that Whittaker probably beats everybody in the top 10, but he especially matches up well against Vettori, I would argue.
Oh man, he beats him everywhere. I mean, that's like an easy matchup for Whittaker. So even if Vettori beats Izzy twice, I just don't see him being a long-term champion in the division. Not to shit on Vettori that hard, but I just think he's a bit too young at the moment. He's still 27, 28 years old, and he's still got a little bit more of growing to do. I mean, he's never fought Yoel Romero. He's never fought fucking Jacare Souza. He's never fought Robert Whittaker. He's not even fought Darren Till. He's not fought any killers in the top 5 at all. So yeah, it's too little. It's a bit too early, in my opinion, for him.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting lead up to this fight, because he beat Kevin Holland, because we all know Kevin Holland's biggest weakness, and he just exploited it. And that was great. But you also just beat a guy who's not ranked anymore, and he might be dropping to it for weight class. And then you beat Jack Hermanson. And it's really hard for us to tell how good Jack Hermanson is, because I think he's good enough to frustrate everybody in the top 5 and not beat all of them, right? He just has a couple of tools that he does well. So it's really hard to tell, like I said, I think Vettori should have waited on this, just fought some other guys and developed a couple of skills a little bit further. I think this is a bit too early for him. In a few years, this is a better fight, but I just think he's too rudimentary at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think just in terms of, so if you look at the list of tools there that Izzy has, he's got so many tools to his striking arsenal. He's got strikes, he's got feints, he's got weird fucking kicks, like he's got all kinds of tools, that go on endlessly. And then you got Marvin Vettori, and you've got like left body kick, left straight, right straight, left hook, right hook, overhand occasionally. That's it, really. You kind of know what you're getting with Marvin Vettori.
Yeah, and Israel, like you said, it has tons of feint, so he sets up all of his shots, and he's throwing shots, and then once you get used to that shot, he'll feint it and go to a different shot, and he'll chain these together, and he'll throw multiple layers of shot. He'll throw like 5 feints to land 1 strike because he knows what you're going to do, right?
Well,
Vettori just closed it. He does something so well, but yeah, Vettori just kind of like his shots aren't overly set up. I like the control lead hand part of his game, but it's a little bit too obvious. It's a little bit too rudimentary. It is what he landed, and the punch that he kind of that we talked about as being his best punch, but you need to set it up. You need to be hiding it behind other feints and other strikes, but I just can't see him landing it really. But okay, so what about the rest of the division? So even like Jared Cannonier, Derek Brunson, I would probably pick Brunson to beat Vettori, honestly.
Ooh.
I don't know about Cannonier.
I mean, Brunson is he's a huge guy as well. And he's very good at what Vettori is good at, kind of imposing his will on people. I don't think he'd be able to do that so easily on Brunson. So, yeah, I believe he'll get probably beaten by Brunson as well.
Yeah, and that's I really wanted to like Vettori coming into this match, but I just but on the flip side, let's go with the hypothesis that Israel Adesanya wins. Whether he does a 5-round crappy decision, which might happen, or he blows him out in the first round, that might also happen. Next, he's fighting Robert Whittaker. Now we get to talk about the fight we all actually want to talk about: Robert Whittaker versus Israel 2. I'm so excited,
buddy. This is gonna be a good. Well, I mean, if this happens, which I think most likely will happen this year, this is going to be the big one of the middleweight division. I mean, the rematch as well. I don't think Robert is going to come in nowhere near, as it was a bit of a poor performance, the first one. He was winging a lot of shots and telegraphing a lot of shots. And ever since then, he's just gone better and better. And Izzy, questionably, he kind of needs that rebound fight in a way, I mean, not saying that he's lost any stock. I mean, I suppose he has, but he's lost a bit of stock from losing to Jan. He needs that kind of tune-up fight and something to raise his stock. And that's perfect, man. The Marvin Vettori one is a perfect fight to kind of tune up before the next one. But yeah, that's a pick-em, man. That could go either way, in my opinion. I'm not even going to pick that one. Yeah. Well, what do you think?
I love the fight, and I hope they go back to Oceania and do another really big stadium like they did. I think most Australia and New Zealand are available right now, so they could do a massive stadium fight down there. That would be awesome to have. But yeah, the first fight that he had with Israel was a weird thing because Whittaker against Romero was a very intelligent, very patient fighter who set up everything. He was throwing multiple shots at different points, but against Israel, he just kept throwing the same combination, and it worked. And it worked once. Yeah. And then he kept going back to it. He kept going back to it. And it was kind of the same entry that Gastelum was using. And then he would throw like the winging shots, like you said. And that's not going to work against a striker as good as Israel because you need to mix things up. Like he actually did well backing Israel to getting his back against the cage. And then he would just let him out. Like he did pressure against the cage. It was a really weird performance, but I think he has a lot of the right tools to actually beat Israel, backing him to the cage, mixing in clinches and takedown because he can get the first entry. And if he mixes up what he does after the first entry, he can actually have a lot of success. It's just a matter of that's a really tall order to do. But I think if anyone's going to do it, if we're talking about a peak Robert Whittaker, and we can assume that he's still in his prime, he can absolutely win.
Man. He can do it. I mean, he's even better than he was in his prime, in my opinion. This is his prime. The last few fights, he's looked exceptional. And I think the first fight, it's quite obvious how he lost. I mean, he was winging big shots, and Izzy is so good at that pullback left counter. He did it like twice on Robert Whittaker, and the second time was just death. He put him away in that second round with that pullback left counter. And I think Whittaker is going to have more tools, and he's going to be more aware of getting knocked out like that as well. Man, it's such a 50-50 fight, man. I think if I watched all the tape, it'd still be hard for me to break it down. I mean, Whittaker beat Yoel a lot more convincingly than Izzy did because he put himself in the fire. Now, I don't know if he's going to put himself in the fire with Izzy as much as he did in the first fight, but yeah, it's just interesting, man.
Yeah, he's adjusted his style really well. And I think if you were to make a Robert Whitaker movie, his 3 fights since losing to Adesanya would be like a training montage of getting ready for Adesanya again, because he fought probably the right guys of like, what tools do I need to sharpen to get ready for Adesanya? And like his fight with Till was a really good example of that. Cannonier, Gaslam, of like, what tools am I going to try to hone? What tools am I focusing on? And then I'm going to do these, I'm going to practice these in the cage to get better. I think he's actually done all the right steps. He's become a more patient. He's become a smarter striker, which is saying a lot because he was so good. So yeah, Whitaker, Adesanya. This is the fight we really want to talk about. This is a fight we wanted 2 months ago.
Fight, man. That is the genuine coin flip fight. That can go either way. Izzy is fantastic, and Whitaker is fantastic, and that could potentially be the winner of that the rematch could potentially be the best middleweight of all time. Or the lead up to that. We're talking about Anderson Silva type status eventually down the line. I mean, it's still going to take a few more title defenses, but yeah, it's basically just them two. We're having a very similar situation, Tim, to the heavyweight division in 2013 with Kane and JDS. You got 2 of the best guys in the whole division, and everyone else is just kind of not good enough right now.
Man, and it's a weird thing. If we're like, we should do a GOAT debates someday and just like play devil's advocate against each other, because we would do fine. But I think Whitaker's best work are probably on the way to the title, like holding the title. Those were interim title matches against Romero, and I think only one was for an official title or something like that. So almost all of his best work has been outside of title fights. Like, for example, Souza, like Brunson, he's beat Till, Cannonier, Gaslam. Non-title fights on all of those. His one fight with Romero was a title fight, and the other one was an interim title. So he's like a one-time champion who might have a case of being the greatest of all time at middleweight. And that's really odd, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he's fought just killer upon killer, though, man. I mean, he's fought world champions, people that have been champions in other divisions as well. Just absolute monsters and killers. I mean, even right now, Izzy is just about catching up to that list that Rob has, but it's literally just 1 win away or 2 wins away to matching Rob's list. So I'd love to see that rematch one day, man. It's just going to be a fireworks rematch.
Yeah, I used to have the numbers up, but I think between Robert Whitaker and Israel now, of the guys in the top 10, I think they've beat 9 of them combined. Like that fight, that is the fight we want. But let's talk. Do you mind talking about Whitaker for a minute? So he was interim.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Oh man, love to. He was interim champion during UFC 217. George St. Pierre and Michael Bisping. This is what do you think of? Let's say a Robert Whitaker versus Michael Bisping. The real champ. Yeah.
Fuck Bisping up, man. I mean, I love Bisping, but let's be honest. Bisping. So Bisping fought GSP for the title, which is nuts. And GSP won, obviously. And I think GSP, he even knew how much of a fucking monster Whitaker was. He's like, oh, Whitaker's next. Okay, cool. I'm out. I'm vacating. I'm out. Let me just get out here, like, as soon as possible. And I think Whitaker was, the rightful champion. Well, that's a bit harsh to say, because, Bisping definitely earned it. But, I mean, Bisping versus Whitaker, I mean, come on. Whitaker would have probably beat the shit out of him.
Yeah, and so Bisping was the official lineal champion. Like, he was the champion. But looking at the resume versus resume, it's hard. I like Bisping a lot, and I obviously like George quite a bit. But it's really hard to say that Whitaker wasn't the right. Whitaker was the right champion, and I think he probably beats George. I would say he beats, especially at that age, at that stage of their career. I think Whitaker probably beats either of them. It may not be an easy fight, but I think he beats either of them, no problem. But yeah, it's weird that George retired. Think about it like this: George St. Pierre retired, holding the lineal lightweight, welterweight, and middleweight championships because he beat BJ. He obviously just retired as a welterweight champion, and then he retired as a middleweight. So he holds 3 lineal titles. I don't know. I like George a lot.
I mean, I just wish they fucking made that Khabib fight, man. Honestly, the George and Khabib fight. But George says he's never going to fight Habib, and I kind of don't want him to because he's 40 years old, man. I think it's time to just pack it in.
Yeah, I don't. At that age, he's not in his prime anymore. He's not the guy who was just absolutely destroying guys. You had to put into perspective of how long ago George St. Pierre was prime, and at age 40, 41 now. George.
Prime GSP versus Prime Whitaker. Now that would be a really good fight. That would be a good fight.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's exactly it. I don't want people to think I'm just going to say Whitaker beats GSP over and over again.
33-year-old GSP or 32-year-old GSP versus Whitaker at 28, 29 at that time. That's a fucking bananas fight, man. That would be sick.
Yeah. I totally co-sign. I think that'd be a lot of fun. But let's get out of here. So coming up later in the week, we're going to do a Davison Figueiredo, Brandon Moreno breakdown, which I'm super excited about. This is a great flyweight match. God of
War, baby.
God of War versus the baby assassin. They had a draw in their first fight. It just is a storyline that writes itself. And we're going to talk about their life story. If you don't know their life story, I will tell you about both of these guys because I just love both of them. We're also going to talk a little bit about our boys, Damian Maia and Bilal Muhammad, later this week. I know they're a couple of boys, right? These are our guys.
Yeah, I like Damian Maia a lot, man. And I do like Bilal Muhammad. I don't really have a dog in that race. I mean, I kind of want Bilal to win just because Damian's retiring soon anyway. But yeah, that should be a good one to break down as well. Can't wait for that one.
Fun fight to break down. And then we have the maybe not fun fight to break down, but we will do it anyway. Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz. I really like talking about Nate Diaz because covering his fights gets us more clicks. And that's
that's what it's all about, baby.
That's what it's about. Yeah, super thanks for listening. Nate Diaz is just an okay fighter. But come back and listen in the next few days. Okay, but and then we're gonna have next week on the post-fight breakdown. Is that right? We're gonna have Hayes and we're gonna have Mom's Basement on. So we got a lot of cool stuff coming up. What else do we need to cover off today, Ash?
Nothing else at all. Just make sure you guys like and subscribe. We've got a lot of content coming out as Tim just mentioned as well. And we're going through a lot of tape for you guys. So I'm sure you guys are gonna enjoy it. And stay tuned.
Beautiful. Yeah. Calf Kick Sports Podcast. Check us out on Instagram. Links will be down below. Have a good week. We'll talk to you later, folks.
Nice.